A rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency. So suppress the price of gold and get those intangible stocks that you perceive that you own, but you don't really. That's another story.
Right.
Let them go up. Then people don't want to buy gold. They want to buy stocks because that's what's going up. But all that while, the purchasing power value, what you can buy with those dollars, are going down. And officially, we've been below and continuing to drop, mind you. But according to the Federal Reserve, we have way less than 4 cents in purchasing power value out of that original dollar. So, when it gets to zero, a trillion times zero is still zero. Look at Zimbabwe. Look at any of these. Look at Venezuela. Look at Argentina. Look at any of these countries that are now or have gone through hyperinflation. I think everybody does definitely need gold and silver, both. I own both myself, and they need some that are just asset protection. In other words, one of the things that I want to be able to do is sustain my current standard of living. And when you go through financial system resets, that we've already started the process. It just hasn't sped up fast enough for people to really see it yet. But I think it's becoming more and more obvious daily. But I want to make sure that I can sustain my current standard of living. And for that, silver is great. And then just fractional form, smaller pieces of gold and silver, a variety of sizes, so you can make sure you can always pay your property taxes, put gas in your car, buy food at the grocery store, all that kind of thing. And then you also need to be in a position to take advantage of the reset that's happening, which is why you see the central banks and the 1%ers loading up on real money gold. Because what happens is all of those assets or instruments that are severely overvalued now, so the stock market, the real estate market, right? What will happen is that they will fall in value at the same time that the value the nominal value of gold is rising. When we see, it's called a cup formation, so it looks like the bottom of a cup, and I know you do a lot of technical things, but that's an accumulation pattern that lets you know that big money has identified a bargain and begun to very, very quietly accumulate. That's when you take some of your growth gold and you convert it into those assets. Just like we were talking about earlier with the gold stocks. Not every companies that are super loaded with debt are probably not going to be able to survive what's ahead of us, because this is a debt bubble. But there will be companies that can. They will just be a whole lot cheaper than they are today. So part of the strategy is capturing these gains when it's time to shift into the other income producing assets, which right now are overvalued but will become undervalued in the future, presuming a repetition of history. But what I know, having studied currency life cycles, is that food becomes the absolute biggest issue. And there are so many things that are happening right now. I wanted to make sure that I had a secure food source from not just myself, but initially anyway, for the rest of my family. And I happen to have a fairly large family. I only have 2 children, but I have lots of sisters and brothers. So originally, I was actually in a little 2-bedroom condo, and because I did not think we would see this in my lifetime. But once the handwriting is in the wall, and we've been setting up for this since the last crisis. I mean, it wasn't like anything got solved. It just got papered over and hidden with money. So that's when I started learning. I wasn't even a gardener before I did this, but I bought a house with a 1/2 acre of land, and I started farming. And now I obviously have people to help me because, there's only so many hours in the day and I'm pretty much working all the time. But food is huge. You really want to be as self-sufficient, as independent as you possibly can be as we go through this reset. So even otherwise, don't we all need food, water, energy, security, community, shelter, barterability, and wealth preservation? Whether we're in crisis or not, don't we all need that?
Absolutely. Yep.
So that's really why I started it, and I have subsequently converted, I only have this little patch of grass in the back for my big, huge dog, Daisy. Other than that, everything has been converted into creating food, so I can share a lot of food as we go through this. But I think we absolutely need to be as independent and self-sufficient as possible, including community. That's why you and I are sitting here talking today, why you're doing your work, why I'm doing my work, and there are others out there that are doing the same work. This is our community, and we have to help each other. I would really say that is really a very personal thing. For me personally, I've been a stockbroker, I've been a banker, I do all of this research, and I believe my research because I know how deeply I dig. And I think that one should always hold the most of their wealth in an undervalued or fairly valued asset that is in a long-term positive trend, and the least amount of your wealth in an overvalued asset or instrument that's in a long-term negative trend. So for me personally, all of my wealth goes into food, water, energy security, barterability, wealth preservation, and shelter. That's where I put most of my wealth. It's hard for me to say a percentage because I don't own any stock. I don't own any bonds. We've been taught about diversification, stocks, bonds, real estate, but all of those have been, real estate isn't exactly intangible, except that they've turned it into an intangible product through REITs and through other mechanisms that they've used. I 100% know that all of those things are severely overvalued. Can they get more overvalued? Of course they can. The central banks are printing money for free, like it's going out of style. They don't have any choice because that's what's keeping all this stuff floating. But I wouldn't have one penny in there.